Hey guys, how's it going? It is such a gorgeous day out today. It is super hot, but I wanted to come out here and talk to you guys about some of my favorite plants right now that are blooming, that are attracting pollinators like crazy. This is my late spring, early summer video of the pollinator magnets in my garden. So these are the ones that are just taking off. They're producing a ton of blooms. The butterflies, the bees, all of the pollinators are really attracted to it, even the hummingbirds. This is the video that if you want to attract your pollinators into your garden, this is the one to watch. So I have a list of 8 plants. Some of them have subsections under those plants, and we'll go into more detail when we get to those. But I have 8 groups of plants that are really attracting pollinators, and it's going to be a really good list, a very strong list. I've been thinking about this list now for the last couple weeks, so it should be really, really good. So in no particular order, let's start out with number 1, which is not a recent to my garden plant, but this variety is recent to my garden. And number 1 would be butterfly bush. Now you can get butterfly bushes in any size. I currently have them in all different sizes. I prefer the dwarf version of butterfly bushes. I think they're much easier to tuck into any landscape. So we just recently removed a butterfly bush. I know, crazy as it's on my list of plants to add. I currently do have 3 butterfly bushes on my property with plans to add 2 more to the property, having a total of 5, even though I did just remove one. The one that we removed didn't have the best blooms on it, so it had to go. But the one that I recently added is called Summer Bird Butterfly Bush in the color magenta. It is growing zones 5 through 9, 2 feet tall and wide, full sun with well draining soil. Butterfly bushes do not like to have their feet wet at all. They don't like sitting in wet, boggy, clay type soil, so you really want to make sure that it's somewhere with well draining. Too much moisture is going to kill that thing off. I always plant mine a little bit higher. I don't, when I'm digging my holes, make it so the root ball is up just at a slight angle, so that way water can run away from it. You don't want to have it be sitting in a hole where water collects. You're going to kill your butterfly bush that way. You don't really need to fertilize them. They do so amazing, and butterfly bushes do bloom on new wood, which means that it's going to bloom on growth that happens same year. So you don't have to worry about if it gets eaten by deer, or if you have, you know, a windstorm that comes and breaks it down in half. You don't have to worry about it. You'll still get blooms the exact same year. So the Summer Bird Magenta Butterfly Bush is one that I'm really loving. That one has bloomed out the earliest compared to all of our other butterfly bushes, and it has really pretty colored blooms. The next plant on my list is Veronica. I love Veronica. I think that it is such a magical plant in the garden, the way that the bloom spikes come up and they constantly bloom. I have seen butterflies and bees on this plant nonstop. I've got one that's just a basic blue one, and then I also have it in a purple color and I have it in a white color. I really love this plant. I've got it scattered in 3 different areas on our property. They are growing zones 4 through 8. You want to plant them in full sun. They bloom very early in the spring until the very end of summer. And on average, they get 18 to 20 inches tall to about 12 to 16 inches wide. So that's one that you can really just tuck into any landscape anywhere. I know some people use them as cut flowers in their gardens to make flower arrangements, which is really cool. But I have noticed the bees on these things like absolute crazy. I really love Veronica. I think it's a magical one to add to any garden. The next plant on my list is honeysuckle, and very specifically is the gold flame honeysuckle. I have loved this plant. I've only had this one for the last couple months on my property, but I have had honeysuckle for over a year on our property. This one, specifically because I really love the color of it. I have it growing up a white trellis in my garden, and I just think it's super magical. I have seen hummingbirds and I have seen bees on this thing like crazy, and anything that makes the hummingbirds go wild, I absolutely love, and I think I'll add more to my garden. This one gets 15 feet tall and it goes as wide as trained. I am going to be keeping it more in check. I really love honeysuckle. I think it's absolutely magical. And if you put it somewhere right by a gate, the smell that you get as you walk through a gate or through an area, you want to put it by walkways. You get that smell and it's amazing. It's so worth it. And then, like I said, it attracts the hummingbirds, it attracts the bees. definitely honeysuckle. You want to make sure that it is planted in full sun though. It can handle some shade, but really not a whole lot. Next on my list is roses, and this is one that has subcategories in it for a couple reasons, and I'm going to go over that in just a second. I personally love having roses in my garden. I've had multiple people say that they're old lady flowers. I do not care. I think that they are so magical to add to any garden. I have tons of different varieties, but the ones that I always see pollinators on, and very specifically bees on, not so much butterflies, not so much hummingbirds or anything like that, but very specifically bees, or any of them that have a low petal count. I prefer the ones that have a high petal count. I think that they're so beautiful. But if you add something like an iceberg rose to your garden, they've got a low petal count and the center of them open up so that way the pollinators can reach the stamens and really get all the pollen. If it has a slightly higher petal count, it'll be okay. They can still work their way in there. But any of those ones that are really, really full, they don't attract too many pollinators. So with that, two of my favorite roses to have in the garden so far that really attract pollinators are the Itsy Bitsy Peach Miniature Rose from Monrovia, growing zones 5 through 8. This one is perfect to tuck into any landscape, gets 18 inches tall, 24 inches wide, and you want to put that in full sun. And I've only had mine in the ground for a very short period of time, and the amount of blooms that I have gotten off of that one rose already has been insane. I've gotten more blooms off of that than I have a couple of the ones that we've already had for a couple years. And then, like I said, any iceberg rose, same growing zones, but those ones do get taller. They can get 5 to 8 feet tall and wide. You can also train them to keep them a little more like compact, but not too much more than that. So iceberg roses, or if you have a smaller landscape, go with that Itsy Bitsy Peach Miniature Rose. The next one on my list is Salvia, and I love Salvia. We have always had Salvia on our property in different colors, different forms, different smells. Right now I have 4 of them on our property. I have 2 Vibe Ignition Purple and 2 Vibe Ignition White Salvias, and I love them. The hummingbirds go crazy for salvia in our area. These ones get a little more delicate looking flowers than some of the other traditional salvias, and I really like it. I love the combination of mixing, 2 purples, 2 whites together. I think it's going to create a really beautiful show. The hummingbirds, like I said, have been absolutely all over that one. It's been a really fun one to have in the garden. There's other ones that you can have that have more of a smell, and we do see some hummingbirds on those ones, but we grew that one mostly for us. Vibe Ignition Salvia's growing zones 7 through 11, and they get 18 to 24 inches tall and wide, and you want to make sure to plant those in full sun. That's not something you want to put in any shade at all. That wants that hot afternoon dry sun. It wants to feel the heat, and it'll perform so well for you. The next one on my list is Heuchera, and I love Heucheras. I have a ton of them on our property. I've got them kind of tucked into every little corner that's got full shade that I can get them in. I think we've got like 12 of them. We have a lot of them. I have one sitting on a coffee table outside. I've got one actually tucked in right behind me. I really love the way that they look. I think that they're just a really fun foliar plant, and a lot of people don't grow them for the blooms. I've heard of people even cutting the bloom spikes off of them. But the hummingbirds really love them, and I often see carpenter bees, which I know a lot of people aren't the biggest fan of, but carpenter bees do a really good job pollinating, and I see carpenter bees on them all the time. So I leave them. I love the looks of the blooms. I think that they are very dainty, and I've heard that they're really good in flower arrangements. I've used them one time in a flower arrangement, and I did like it. But they come in different colors, different shapes, different sizes. You can get them for pretty much whatever you need, which is really, really nice. So I recommend looking into any Heuchera. Personally, I like the amber color. I think it's a really pretty one. That's the one that we have sitting on our coffee table, and I really love the look of it. Most Heucheras are growing zones 4 through 9. They get 8 to 12 inches tall and wide, and they'll get up to 2 feet with their bloom spikes. That's really where most of their height comes from, and they are shade lovers. You don't want to put these in any sun or they will burn and they won't perform that well for you. The next one on my list is lavender, and I feel like that is such a given plant to add for pollinators. We winter our lavender over. We are in a warmer zone. I'm in a zone 9A in Northern California, and lavender is normally growing zones 7 through 10. I prefer Spanish lavender for the smell and the look, but English lavender is also a really great one. I just haven't had very good luck with English lavender. Like I said, Spanish lavender, I harvest it very early in the spring. I've already done one cutting and I'm drying it. I tend to winter it over and do a hard cut back, and I'm already seeing blooms that come back on my lavender again, which is really exciting. Zones 7 through 9, full sun, and you want to put it in well draining soil. This is another plant that does not like to be sitting in wet feet. It doesn't want to sit in a ton of moisture, and it wants to cook in the sun. If you need something that needs to handle hot afternoon sun, lavender is it. I really prefer like smaller, more compact plants because I am in a smaller property. Normally during the growing season, when it is full of blooms and it's got its little flags on the top of it, it is just buzzing with bees nonstop. You really can't get the bees off of it. And so that is a major one to add to your garden if you really want to attract pollinators. And the very last thing on my list, which has become one of my favorites every spring and every fall, and I forget about it during the rest of the growing season, and that is a sweetspire or an itea. They come in different sizes and I love them. I have a more compact one and I keep it in a terracotta container, and I think it's absolutely amazing. I look forward to the blooms every single spring because it just comes alive with bees. The entire bush just vibrates. The sound is amazing. It's so cool when you just hear nothing but bees buzzing on a plant. It's really, it's magical. This, I think, attracts about the same amount of pollinators as lavender does. Like I said, I have a dwarf variety, so it only gets a couple feet wide, I think 2.5 to 3 feet tall and wide. Perfect for containers. It's in a large rolled rim. You can also put it in the ground. It does prefer wet soil, but not continuously soaking, so you want to keep it moist, if that makes sense. You don't want it to dry out. The growing zones 5 through 9, and you want to plant it in full sun and you will get amazing fall color, but it can handle partial shade. The fall color though is absolutely amazing. So ours is in full sun. It does get protection from the hot afternoon sun, but it does get a ton of sun throughout the morning and up to about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The blooms on it are amazing. They cascade. They look like they should be some type of like flower arrangement at a wedding. They're so gorgeous. So that is my list of plants to add to your garden if you're looking to bring beneficials into your garden this growing season. These are my top performers, the ones that I have loved, the tried and trues, the ones that continue to bloom, and even if they have a short blooming season, they perform so incredibly well. So I hope that helps. I hope you found a new plant today to add to your garden, maybe one that you hadn't even heard of. So I really hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned about a new plant today, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye guys.